I think it's not just about making the data revolution happen, it's also about making it succeed. And these are actually two different challenges. So my talk today is about mastering the digital quantum leap. Where will the digital revolution go? In order to understand that, it's good to look back. And actually it started with a bunch of mainframe computers, and then the military built ARPANET that was opened up to create the internet, and then the World Wide Web was invented at CERN. This actually created a platform for everyone and also new digital markets. The next step then was to create social media. That means we became part of that internet as source of information and also as storage of information. And now things are moving on to the Internet of Things. That means things are becoming part of the internet. Things will get senses with sensors. They will get smart with artificial intelligence. In a sense, this gives them a life. And we're moving on to the Internet of Everything. That means some people envision that we would have actually sensors placed into our body to measure our health function and report it back to the internet. Of course, the question is, who would be in control of that data? No question, we're living in a time of big data. In a minute, 700,000 Google queries are being sent, 500,000 Facebook posts. As we go shopping, as we move around, all of that creates data traces, and they're being collected to create this big data. And at the same time, the AI revolution is on its way. In a couple of years, we may have super intelligent systems, some people expect, and all of that allows us to create really fantastic products and services such as Siri and digital assistants, real-life translation, automated trading at financial markets, Watson, cognitive computing, CERN, and many more applications actually in the real life, for example, automated driving. And the question came up, can we know everything? Can we understand the human body, brain, and personality? And Chris Anderson even went a step further and asked, actually he didn't ask it, he claimed it, that would be the end of theory. If we just had enough data, quantity would turn into quality, and the data would reveal the truth by itself and tell us what we had to do. And that would make science obsolete. Well, and we were all asked, do you find big data a great thing? And of course people said, yes. And do you find artificial intelligence great? And people said, again, yes, of course. And they were asked, do you find behavioral economics great? Yes, it would be very useful, people said. And all of that went on its way, and see what we got. We're now living in a world where basically every single step that we do and every single click is being recorded. It's being tracked by 10 trackers saying, these are the cookies and many other kind of pieces of software that are following every single step that you do. And we've learned about software and hardware breaches that allowed basically to read every single letter that you would type. And of course, all those data would reveal everything about your life and yourself. There's some companies such as Axon Global, most people don't even know about, that collect data of 64,000 social media providers. Facebook and Twitter are just two of them. You know, it's unimaginable how big the data set is. Homeland Security is one of their favorite partners. And now it's possible, we have learned that the NSA can find your voice based on voice profiles. So that means they can find out where you are, what you're saying, whom you're talking to, and they can record it, they can evaluate it with real life transcription, and they can run queries basically on all the things that people say, you know. Then of course some people say, don't worry, we're just using GPS and accelerometer. But experts know, of course, if you have 4 GPS data points, that's basically enough to figure out who you are. That means to identify you by name. And hackers have managed to turn a gyroscope and also accelerometer into microphones. I mean, even if the microphone is not being used, you can listen in through other sensors. And with your voice, it's possible to determine your emotional state, your personality, and all these kind of things. And now Google is also using the camera basically as a browser. So they will use visual information more and more. And that really allows to do a lot of things, including measuring your heartbeat and figure out what your emotional state is, and to create digital doubles. Yes, all this data that's being created and collected is then flowing together in the data archives of secret services. You know this since Edward Snowden. And back in 2013, Angela Merkel said, spying among friends is really a no-go. Then it turned out how it was meant, basically, actually it's okay to spy among partners. Now the question is, what percentage of the internet is being recorded, or at least filtered and analyzed? In Germany it's 20%, NSA just 1.6%. It's basically everything, given that most of the use of bandwidth is for YouTube videos and the like. You only need to know the link, you don't have to record everything, right? So basically they know everything. And the CIA director Gus Hunt at that time has admitted it. He said it's really very nearly within our grasp to be able to compute on all human-generated information. You're already a walking sensor platform. And that brought us actually into a new world, the new stage of capitalism, where there is actually a new currency. Let's try to pick. A new currency, which is data. Data is the new oil, and in fact, while oil companies were the most valuable companies in the past, it's now IT companies. And not only do we have a new currency, we also have a new economy, and this is called attention economy. That means we're flooded with information. We cannot defend ourselves against it. We can basically just follow the flow and do what we're advised to do. We cannot check all that information. We are being made to pay attention to products and all sorts of things, and we are certainly being distracted from the really important things that are going on in world politics. And there's a new legal system because code is law. Algorithms determine more and more what we can do and what we can't do, but those algorithms are not being passed by parliament. That means it basically circumvents our democracy, our democratic institutions, and there are just very few people who actually determine how these algorithms work, what they do, what we can do and what we can't do. And that means this has created, in perspective, a new society. Some people have asked, could society be run like a giant machine? And if we wanted to do that, we would really need to know what are all the different pieces, right? And this is basically you and me and everyone else need to know what we're doing, how we work, what drives us, and how we can be driven, how our behavior can be controlled. In fact, people have been working on this concept of smart cities, and this is much about automation of cities. And not only of logistic processes, but actually, as you will learn in connection with the citizen score, it's also about controlling people's behavior. In fact, Google wants to reinvent and reprogram the state. That means they're creating operating systems not only for smartphones and computers, but also for our society. And IBM does the same thing. Some people have proposed that Watson should be the next US president. Mark Zuckerberg is also being said that he has pretty global ambitions. Maybe that has changed recently, but we'll see. We also basically have a new political system. Politicians want to rule their societies more efficiently, and that means that they have asked for a digital sector. And it actually exists. How does it work? It's based on an approach which is called nudging, and basically on a way to control people through information. As you know, knowledge is power, and so basically what some companies have tried to do, such as Facebook or Recorded Future or Palantir, to create a digital crystal ball that would allow them to see what's going on in the world, what we're doing in real time in any corner of the world. And then the next thing is to apply predictive analytics in order to predict the future. Now, if you believe in freedom of will, if that should work, you basically have to manipulate people's behaviors. Not only predict it, because that's not 100% accurate, but to control it. And that's being done with big data, with personal data, a hell lot of data. And in fact, we have all been measured. Our personality is laid out on the internet. There are companies such as Crystal knows that advertises with slogans such as "see anyone's personality." It's on the internet. And it's pretty detailed. This is by the Watson analysis, I believe. You can see many different character traits, how strongly they're represented in that person, and also activity patterns over the week and over the day. All of that has been recorded in very much detail. And in fact, there is a problem because there are many cognitive biases. Our brain is very efficient. It just uses 100 watts and does wonderful things. But it takes shortcuts, and that shortcuts can be used basically to trick people. In fact, for every cognitive bias that we have, there is basically a trick to manipulate people. And that has been automated using artificial intelligence. So basically there is something like digital buttons that allows certain kind of companies and secret services for sure to push these buttons in order to trick people. And it's based on this attention economy, on personalized information. So if you manage to get the attention of somebody, you can influence the emotions, the decisions, opinions, and the behavior. So personalized information is it. And this is called neuromarketing, or sometimes also personalized marketing. It uses a lot of information about you in order to create information that is so much tailored to you that it feels like your decision. But you have been made to believe it was your idea, but in fact it was triggered. So now basically the kind of science that came up in the 30s of last century, behaviorism, where scientists have conditioned dogs and other animals by rewards and punishment. This kind of science is now being applied to us, and the Skinner box that we put into is invisible. It's the filter bubble. You don't see it. It's that personalized information world that influences your thinking and emotions. And for this, basically, you're being profiled and targeted, all of you. Every single one. And estimates are that the amount of information collected about every one of us every single day is between megabytes and gigabytes per day. Certainly a lot, millions of digits. And of course, that amount of information can be misused. For example, in order to influence elections. We've recently learned about this. Google can do that, Facebook can do that. And now we have weaponized propaganda AI, social bots that would send personalized messages to influence your thinking and your voting behavior. And this apparently has been applied in the Brexit referendum. So the election outcome has been manipulated, and there have been people who have been terribly proud about having been able to destroy the oracle of the masses, that means the wisdom of the crowds, and to create chaos, right, with the goal to create a new kind of order. And in the meantime, we know that Cambridge Analytica was involved in this, but also a company behind Cambridge Analytica called Strategic Communication Laboratories that is actually working for the military and secret services and has direct connections to the Queen of England. So basically, if the Queen can basically determine the outcome of democratic elections, we don't really need to have elections anymore. If you think all of that is exaggerated, then listen to Tristan Harris, who has worked in a Google operation room, and he tells in his TED Talks how a handful of tech companies controls billions of minds every day. So these are your minds, right? And so the goal is to correct so-called misbehavior. As you can see, that bird is not supposed to be here, it's supposed to be there. So we should all be in our place and be doing what we're being told. This looks like a flock of birds, but of course it's more like a crystal, like a military march formation, and this is a picture as you see it outside in the real world. So this is happening, right? And in a sense, something like the early stage of the Matrix has been created. And let's go back to Joseph Goebbels from the Third Reich. He said basically the secret of propaganda is to flood people with propaganda in such a way that they do not even notice they're being deceived. And all of that goes back to the Ash experiment, which basically shows if people are being told from different sides the very same thing, they would say the same thing even if their own senses would tell them something else. So if just enough other people say a certain thing, we would not trust our own wisdom. Now all of that has basically now been automated. We're in times of social bots and robot journalism is on the way. We're certainly living now in a post-factual society. And why is this? Because, as we've learned from George Orwell, the ultimate power comes if you can rewrite history. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And in fact, even the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive, is not anymore showing you all the information that has been recorded in the past. A lot of that information is being blocked. I've verified it myself. And now we have actually a situation where as you watch YouTube videos, in principle, they could be reenacted in real time. The technology is there. That means the mimics can be changed, and what's being said can be changed, and it would look pretty realistic. So this is what we call deep fake today. And there's more in the pipeline, actually. Because a lot of the digital revolution is being promoted by the military-industrial complex. That means, first of all, new technologies are being used for war and secret services, and eventually, after some time, there would be business applications and eventually would be there for everyone's benefit. So basically, what you read about in the newspaper today is probably about 10, 20, 30 years late. And there is much more in the pipeline. So what will happen? Basically, a convergence of different kinds of technologies, right? ICT is just one step of that convergence in pervasive computing. And then basically what comes next is brain research, and artificial intelligence will lift cognitive science to the next level. And nanoscience comes in. Remember this, cognitive science, nanoscience, this is now going to flow together. And basically all the technology that we know of will converge, that's the plan. And I'll tell you in a minute what you can do with it in perspective. So for sure the Internet of Things is one of those technologies that will reshape the world, because we can measure more or less everything in a lot of detail cheaply in the future. Well, today information volume is doubling every 12 months. That means in 1 year we are producing as much information as in all the years of human history before. In the future, with the Internet of Things, information produced will double every 12 hours. This is amazing, and the question is, how do you handle all that information? And if you saw that a lot of that information will just be forgotten or deleted, maybe you're wrong, because there are also new communication means, which is called Li-Fi. LED technology is being used to transmit information 8 gigabytes per LED. So just imagine you put together 10,000 or 100,000. You know, that kind of new Wi-Fi, the Li-Fi, is on its way. And you can imagine what this thing is about, what it can do, what it's being used for. Now, that also sheds a new light on this statement. On German ground, there's no violation of German right. This was about surveillance, you know, after Snowden revealed what he had found. And then it turns out that the BND, I mean the German Secret Service, had the theory that everything that happens above ground, it means a millimeter or more above ground, that's basically outside of German law, right? This is kind of a space, and they can do anything they want in space. Of course, that was just their idea, but the technology is there, as I just showed you, basically. And so the question is, what's being done with all that information? Well, basically, that will go into quantum computers. And they're not yet perfect. I mean, at least those systems that we officially know of have their weaknesses. But they're being used for optimization. And not just of a product, let's say of a car, but also of traffic altogether and in perspective society. You know, if you looked up D-Wave systems at Wikipedia some time ago, you could see Volkswagen Group listed over here and Virginia Tech, kind of Langley, Virginia, very close to CIA. You know? You don't find these two entries anymore at Wikipedia. I don't know why. Anyway, also Daimler and JP Morgan and Samsung are very much interested in this quantum computing technology. And of course, Google is one of the big players. And now, let's look into Obama's big brain project. So while the Human Brain Project in Europe is just trying to simulate a human brain, the US Brain Project, which spends about 3 times as much money, that was the plan, would measure what the brain cells would do. They didn't say whether it's in animals or in humans. And how would they measure this? Well, if you read documents, then basically it measures nanotechnology. You know, it's very easy basically to absorb nanoparticles into your body. And then this is the plan. So the Brain Initiative seeks to deepen understanding of the inner workings of the human mind and to improve how we treat, prevent, and cure disorders of the brain. It's not just talking about diseases. It's talking about disorders. I mean, wrong behavior would also be considered potentially a disorder. So the question is, how far can we go in terms of mind control? I told you about the big nudging, neuromarketing, personalized information, how we can be influenced from the outside. It doesn't work perfectly, of course. But just imagine we would have the next level of mind control systems. Actually, there are a lot of technologies, patents that have been published. This list stops in 2002 over here, right? But there are people like this professor, so if you go to the webpage, then you can see this is about reading brain activities. It's also about influencing people. So also some companies are now working basically on technological telepathy, so basically brain-to-brain communication with technology now. But if you can read brains, you can also write content of brains. That is really an ultimate mind control technology if we would allow it to happen. Anyway, that's in perspective, right? Just to wake you up. What's potentially possible in the future and what may be there already in the future. So, will democracy survive big data and artificial intelligence? That's the question, and some people have really suggested democracy is an outdated technology, has produced wealth, health, and happiness for billions of people, but now we want to do something new. Now, Putin warned us, the leader in artificial intelligence will rule the world. And who will be that? It's not Google. China has already overtaken Google, and what are they using their AI systems for? Well, not only for mass surveillance, but also for the citizen score. That means everything that you do or don't do is measured, and it gets plus or minus points. If you cross the road when there is a red light, you get minus points. If you pay your rental apartment a few days late, you get minus points. If you don't visit your grandmother frequently enough, you get minus points. If you read critical news, minus points. If you have the wrong kinds of friends, minus points. And all of that determines what kind of jobs you can get, what kind of services, what are the conditions, how much you have to pay for your loan, and what visa you can get for travel. And this is not the end, right? So what is superintelligence about? To create, as some people would say, godlike AI systems that are far superior to humans, that would tell us what we are supposed to do. So this is technological totalitarianism. The Chinese system, which actually has been created by Western technology companies and a military-industrial complex and secret services, that combines something like digital communism, like big nudging is, we know better than you what's good for you, so do it. Digital feudalism, that's the citizen score. Depending on your overall score, you will get anything you wish, or you will not get an expensive medical treatment anymore, and things like that, because resources in the future are predicted to be short. That's what the sustainability challenge is about, and UN Agenda 2030. And it has elements of digital fascism, right? Big Brother, Brave New World, and in fact, all that stuff that was part of fascism is again there. Mass surveillance, unethical experiments, social engineering, mind control, propaganda, censorship, force conformity. In this case, we have a new kind of policing, predictive policing, centralized control, and human rights are not being taken seriously. And it's not by accident. You know, I spent quite some time to figure out why do we find this spreading of this fascist kind of thinking all over the world now, and in fact it goes back to Nazi Germany, where with the Operation Paperclip, a lot of Nazi scientists and engineers were brought over to the United States and then worked, for example, in the CIA on, for example, mind control programs. And so this kind of thinking has been exported to the United States, and there it was developed further by the CIA and other institutions, and now basically comes back to us as a boomerang. And if you think, so far it wasn't painful really, and I enjoy my smartphone and all the services that I'm getting, I can tell you there's one more thing that has been created, which is automated killing, autonomous killing, euthanasia. That means if resources would get short and would not be enough for everyone, then basically AI would decide who would die and who wouldn't. And that would be based on, for example, the citizen score, right? So this is a digital judgment day, and if we have those scientific discussions on trolley problems, this is exactly about that. Don't be deceived. This is about what we're going to do in an unsustainable world. So all the terrible horrors of fascism are coming back in a different dressing, and so I'm saying, stop. This is not the kind of digital revolution we wanted to have. This clashes with human dignity. You know, in Germany, based on the experiences that we made in the Second World War and Third Reich and Holocaust, Article 1 is about human dignity. We're not supposed to be treated like objects, animals, or data. And this article cannot be changed forever. And so it's not allowed in principle, it's not compatible with human dignity that somebody would measure all our life and download our life basically to databases without our knowledge, agreement, and our ability to control that data. So just to give some example why this is not compatible with human dignity. So Google themselves have said, we know where you are, we know where you've been, we can more or less know what you're thinking about, and I think they've also said, and we know what you would do most likely before you know it. And also, if you were on a dating portal and saying you're having an intimate exchange of emotions with some other people, nobody is watching. Not at all. 50 companies are watching you, you know. And data is being sold about diseases. These are conclusions that are being made from big data that has been collected about you. You may not even know yourself what kind of health data they're collecting. And even HIV data, I mean, highly sensitive data has been sold. So basically, no wonder there's a tech clash now. Yeah? The majority of Germans are basically think Facebook is a danger to democracy, and basically now people are raising up against those tech giants to civilize them. And they're asking, who owns this digital twin, the digital double that has been created about us? And so we need to get back control over our data. And so what needs to be done? Well, the GDPR is just the first step. I think what's missing is we don't really know how many 100 companies have collected data about us. We cannot write them all a letter and say, send me the data that I have collected about you. And I don't agree, I want this to be deleted. We don't even know most of the companies, right? So what we could do, because there's anyway a global center for cybersecurity that collects a hell lot of data about you in order to make you identifiable. And CERN has capacity to do a lot of things with a hell lot of data about us. So they have the capacity to do it. They have the computers, they have the AI, they have the connections throughout the world, they have a lot of data. And so what we should do is turn what's called war rooms have been created in order to manage crises in the future. For example, the sustainability crisis, we need to turn them into peace rooms. Published about it in Nature. And so what are peace rooms about? It's about creating more transparency, creating a democratic framework of use, to use the data by interdisciplinary teams of scientists. So data would be used scientifically, there would be ethical experts, there would be a multi-perspective approach, there would be participatory opportunities. But this is not enough. This is still not giving us back control over our data, informational self-determination, which follows directly from human dignity. This is our right. We have to demand it. And now we have to build the technology and put the policy and law in place. And so how could it work? So assume every one of us would have a personal data mailbox. I mean, they exist. The Secret Service has that about you. You know, just you don't have access to your own data mailbox, right? I want to change this. We should all be changing this. So basically, you should be able to determine what company or institutions is allowed to use what data for what purpose and period of time, and maybe also for what amount of money. And in this way, you could gain control back over that data. If you wouldn't say, I'm fine with that data being used, the company wouldn't be allowed to use it. But in principle, every personalized service and product would be possible. Just the company would have to gain your trust. And that would create a competition for trust, and that would bring us eventually towards a trustable digital society. All the uses would be transparently recorded in the data mailbox. Again, that's point 6. Governments and scientists would be allowed to do statistics. They would also be recorded in the data mailbox. And we would have digital assistants, would probably be AI systems that are personalized, that would help us manage the data, because it's a lot of data, right? So they would know what are our privacy preferences, and which companies we trust and which we don't, so they would make a pre-configuration, and then we could approve it or change it as we want. So that's basically what I think needs to be done and can be done. And it would also open up the value of all the data for small and medium-sized companies, for spin-offs, for scientists. So there would be a large benefit really to everyone, to our society. So we would come towards a digital society built on trust, and of course blockchain can be a technology really also to ensure that there's no cheating and everything happens as expected. The next thing is that we need to learn to build ethically aligned design, or to create designs for value. That means to build our constitutional, social, ecological, cultural values into IT platforms, right? And there are many values that matter for our society to work well. Depending on context, including privacy and autonomy and justice and dignity and all this, so we need to learn how to build it into those systems. And We should also build democracy into those systems. So basically, what is democracy about? It's about human rights and dignity, freedom, self-determination, pluralism, protection of minorities, division of power, checks and balances, participation, transparency, fairness, justice, legitimacy, anonymous equal votes, and privacy in the sense of protection from misuse and exposure and the right to be left alone. But we could go even a step further and say, hey, let's build digital democracy, let's upgrade democracy with digital means, and let's basically support collective intelligence and build platforms for online deliberation where arguments are being collected and basically structured into different perspectives and to bring together people on round table, virtual or not, to integrate different perspectives and solutions, because the success secret of collective intelligence is that if you combine the best individual solution with, say, the second best and the third best, it would not reduce the performance of that solution. It would improve the solution. This is what you can expect for complex problem solving. And that's why collective intelligence is so important. And I've recently called for city Olympics, basically to harvest our ideas worldwide to solve climate and energy and sustainability and resilience and peace challenges together, and have the solutions open sourced. Make it Creative Commons so everyone can use those solutions created over there in these friendly competitions, so to advance them further, to apply them, to combine them. So combinatorial innovation and collective intelligence, these are two big success principles of the future. And of course we need to learn to boost sustainability. At the moment, every one of us is basically throwing away about 50 tons of garbage in a lifetime. That has to change, cannot be changed by regulation. So let's use the Internet of Things to measure externalities. That means the impact that our behavior has on the environment and other people, noise, CO2, different kind of garbage, and then basically apply a no harm principle, increase positive externalities, reduce negative ones, show fair compensation. And the compensation, I mean, a real-time feedback and incentive system that we would build would be multi-dimensional. So replace one-dimensional money by multi-dimensional incentives. And we're working on this, bringing Internet of Things and blockchain technology together in order to create new market forces in the system. So basically garbage would say, hi, you can reuse me. I am a piece of aluminum, I'm 100 grams of glass, I'm this, I'm that, you know, and you can earn as much money if you do this. We can build values into that kind of system. We can reward people for recycling. You know, that would create the kind of market forces that would, through decentralized autonomous organizations, for example, bring the circular economy and the sharing economy on the way. And there would be a new paradigm from top-down power and control to empowerment and coordination. And of course, the Internet of Things can help here. We've come up with solutions to improve traffic flow on freeways through feedback locally, decentral, not with a traffic control center, and also to coordinate traffic lights throughout a city, also in a decentralized way, based on self-organization with fantastic performance gains. And so basically the Internet of Things can be a liberating technology. Digital technologies can help us to implement democracy, to bring also capitalism to a next democratic level, to basically unleash the power of combinatorial innovation through information and innovation ecosystem that we will all be a part of. So to end, I'd like to say we need more critical thinking, we need consideration of unwanted side effects, possible misuses, dual uses, and ethical issues. That's important if you want to be successful with the digital revolution. So the right answer is yes, but that creates better technology. So to fix the world by 2030, there are better solutions. Digital democracy, digital assistance, finance 4.0, democratic capitalism, city Olympics. So it's time to fix our society together. Thank you.